If you've been consuming my content for a while, you know that I'm kind of known as the running coach that is a big proponent of strength training. In fact, I don't even really consider it cross-training. It's just mandatory training that runners have to do if they want to achieve their potential. Just like in any other sport, whether it's basketball or football or soccer, these athletes don't just play the sport, they also do a lot of conditioning. They get their body ready for the sport so that they can excel. That's what runners have to do, exactly the same. And so in this video, what I want to do is present you some of the biggest mistakes that I see runners make with their weightlifting, with their strength training, so that you don't make these mistakes. You can save a lot of time, you can save a lot of wasted energy, and you can become a better runner. All right, mistake number one is taking a lot of classes, whether that's body pump at the gym, whether it's some boot camp somewhere, or maybe it's the CrossFit workout of the day. Now, I don't really have a big problem with these classes, but if we're talking about ideal strength training for runners, all of these classes really miss the mark. And that's because primarily there's too much cardio in these classes. There's a big metabolic component to these workouts where you're going to be doing things in a circuit. You might be incorporating some aerobic exercise like cycling, running, or rowing, and that's not really the goal that runners have when they get in the weight room. The other problem with these classes is that there's no progress. You know, there's only kind of the workout of the day, the class that you go to take, but they don't build on each other over time. There's no progression as you go through these classes. So I think they're fun during the off season. I think they're really fun if you're not formally training for something. But if you are training for a race, if you're a performance-oriented runner, in other words, you want to get faster, you have a certain time goal that you'd like to hit, or you have a new distance that you'd like to run, we have to be a little bit more strategic with our training in the weight room. So I don't think it's a good idea to do these classes when we're in the throes of hard training. Instead, we have to really work on being more strategic with our lifting so that it better complements our running workouts. The other big mistake is a really common one, and that's runners, they get in the weight room and they lift for endurance. So they do things like 3 or more sets of 15 or more repetitions. And the thinking goes, and I admit it's very logical, the thinking goes, I want to become a better endurance runner. So when I go in the weight room, I'm going to train my body for endurance. It makes intuitive sense, but we get enough of an endurance stimulus when we're out there running. We're doing the long runs, our mileage is creeping up in the middle of a training season, we're running tempo runs and all kinds of other aerobic-oriented workouts all the time. And we get enough of an endurance stimulus when we're training with our running. But when we get in the weight room, the goal isn't endurance. We have to supplement our running with additional work in the weight room. And that work is to give us strength, is to give us power, and is to give us injury prevention benefits. So lifting for endurance is one of those things that makes intuitive sense, but it doesn't actually fulfill the goals of weightlifting for runners. You're gonna get kind of strong, but not as strong as you could if you lifted for strength. And you're certainly not going to be building the power necessary to kick hard at the end of a race and to better improve your running economy. So we can actually spend far less time in the weight room than you would if you were lifting for endurance. And if you're like me, you don't really want to spend too much time in the weight room. Another common mistake that runners make in the weight room, and this is typically runners who have experience in the weight room, is that they lift like bodybuilders. They separate their days of lifting into chest day, leg day, bis and tris day. And that is taken directly from the world of bodybuilding, where you are specifically working on individual muscles, like, for example, bis and tris. So we don't need to do that, and we certainly don't need to be in the weight room as much as bodybuilders do. Bodybuilders will probably spend 5 or 6 days in the weight room. Their workouts will be anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours or maybe even more. They're doing an incredibly high volume of hard work that specifically isolates individual muscles. We don't have to do that. Instead, runners are going to be working on compound multi-joint lifts, the big fundamental lifts. And we certainly don't have to spend 2 hours in the weight room. Most of our workouts should only be about 45 minutes long, maybe up to an hour during our peak weightlifting sessions, but that's kind of like our peak long runs when we're doing marathon training. They don't happen all the time, only during brief periods during that training cycle. So if you're someone who is getting in the weight room, or maybe setting up a home gym at your house, if you're a runner who wants to get stronger, I hope you avoid these big mistakes that are very common among runners. Instead of lifting for endurance, we can lift for strength and power. Instead of taking classes, we could be more methodical and strategic with our weightlifting so it progresses over time. In other words, so it's periodized to our running schedule. And finally, we don't need to lift like a bodybuilder, we can lift like runners, for strength, for power, and for explosivity. If you'd like more lifting content, don't miss our strength series that you can sign up for on strengthrunning.com. I'll put a link in our end screen here for you. And until then, do leave me any questions if you have them for lifting for endurance runners. I'll make sure to answer every one in the comments below.